But what? Yo,
This dude
Like,
just removed his shirt.
show me a job.
I thought he just
Show me a
removed
job.
his shirt.
I'm not gonna argue
Yo.
with you. Show me a job. What job you have? Show me a job. 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 There is no argument need to
What
be
you want me
had.
to
You
do?
broke as hell.
You want
Show
me
me
to
a
do a
job.
physical
Show me a
test?
job. Show me a job. Show me a job.
Show me a
Show me a
job.
job.
Show me a
Show me
job.
a job.
Keep
Show
saying
me a
that
job.
to the mic.
Show me a job. I'm just saying.
You
I'm
run
just
out
saying.
of breath
What
too.
argument? What argument? What argument? What
Bro,
argument?
holy
Yo,
fuck.
wait.
What? Bro, okay, wait, I'm on. Look, I'm being dead ass. Please stop doing this redundant shit. Just because my bass mic is loud does not mean I'm loud mic. It does not mean I'm loud mic. It's my normal mic. I can't do shit about it.
I bet.
That's not
I
my
bet.
normal
Just
mic.
turn
Like,
noise
I can't
suppression
do
off.
shit about it.
Show me a job.
I can't do shit about it. Demar,
Your
you're
mic is-
redundant. Shut your fat
No,
ass
you're not
up.
loud,
Fat
bro.
ass,
Just-
black little ass nigga. Look at you, bro.
Oh.
Thin ass, chin little ass nigga.
Show me this.
Dumb
Show me
ass
this.
nigga.
Show me you got my.
And nigga, that's redundant. What the fuck? That's so redundant. Even if I was still, that's redundant. What is that gonna do to make the debate? You're fucking gay. You're fucking trash, nigga. Why are you showing a 16-year-old? Why are you showing a minor your body? Why are you exposing your body to a minor, nigga? That's weird as fuck. Are you okay, bro?
You make.
What are you even saying? I can't fucking hear you. You're speaking fucking nonsense. I genuinely can't hear what the fuck you're saying, dude.
Show me a job.
I can't hear what the fuck you're saying. That would be redundant.
On my life.
That would be redundant.
Ape it out.
Okay.
You're begging here. We're supposed to debate.
Show me a job.
You're begging me to show a band and show a job, but that is absolutely redundant. What the fuck is that going to do?
Job.
That's not going to do shit. You have a deformed black lip with your stinky ass breath talking to me. Look at you fake laughing, bro. Look at you fake laughing. I'm being. Oh no! Wait! Demar, do that again. Do it again. Put your hand on your face again. Put your hand on your face again. Put your hand on your face again. Now, turn back on your mic.
Come on.
Turn on your cam. Turn on your cam. Turn on your cam.
Yo,
Turn on your
hey,
cam. You do that shit again. Do that shit again.
Yeah,
I want to see that shit. Do it again. Do it again.
Continue to come up.
Hey, y'all gonna have a debate or what?
No, they don't want
Y'all gonna have a debate? What? Y'all gonna have a debate? What? Because if y'all just going past this can be shit, I just stay for y'all to just debate. So
they don't want to debate. I told you. So,
let me
they don't want to debate. Can I invite Afi up in here? Would you allow me to invite Afi? And then we can go into the pecking VC and we can pack. Can you let me invite Afi and GPA and my people right quick? And then we can just run this shit right quick. So I can teach these. Because they're going to lose. They know they're going to lose. They know they stand no chance. None of them can beat Afi alone. So,
but this
we can just pack. Can I get my guys up in here so we can just run the fade? Because that seems like what they want to do. They don't want to debate.
They don't want to debate. They're waiting for
Kairos.
They say they're waiting for Kairos. They say they're waiting for Kairos or something.
How about this? Let Saber down. Tell Lane to run my 1v1. Saber and Kairos want to debate. There's going to be Saber matchup. My matchup is with Lane. Lane can go ahead with my fade right now.
Shit. All right, bro. Let me. I bet. So,
Look.
do y'all want me to ask a judge?
Sure, why not?
Alright. Cut down your mic. Try it on PC. Cut down your mic. Your shit got that echo.
Shit, my fault.
What are you talking about? There's no echo.
Fuck?
Yes, there is. There's an echo. Alright, there we go.
Wait, okay, let me turn that shit up now.
Alright. Yeah, there we go. Alright.
Cool, alright.
Okay, sure.
Now,
Go
look,
ahead.
unless, cause look, I've seen you always been talking about the Tawheed and shit, and we've already debated upon the scripture, so do you want to talk about the Trinity? I think the Trinity is absolutely
I don't believe in the Trinity. I don't believe in the Trinity. I'm not.
Kyle says he's ready. Kyle says he's ready. Kyle, so y'all want
So
to
what are
do
you?
too? Kyle says he's ready.
Coward. I bet.
Oh my, okay,
bro.
bro, can we make up our mind? Can
Can
we make up our mind? Bro, I'm on. Look, not to make you like make the rules here, but look, all I'm saying is stick to one thing. You're letting this nigga Demar say shit. Move this nigga down about a 1v1. Move this nigga up. We're about to
Chuck, we on like a 1v1.
No,
ever
it's not the
2v2.
1v1 because Kuro.
Alright, yeah, I know, but but he told you, let me run lanes fade, and then we can do that 1v1.
But how about this?
After.
Y'all two can run y'all ones. I'm you, Saber and Kyrus. Y'all two run y'all ones. After y'all that move both for y'all.
No, we're going to
Both
2v2.
y'all.
We're going to
And
2v2.
them
One is
two
supporting the
ones.
other, one can make the arguments. That's completely fine with me.
Hold on.
I think that's far more diverse.
Hold on. First,
That's
me
far
and
more
Kuro
diverse.
already.
No,
hold on,
let
hold on.
Kairos up again. We can do it. We can do a full on
Me and
2v2. That's
Kairos.
full on diverse. This
Hold on.
nigga Demar's just.
Bro, do y'all want
I'm being
2v2
ass.
or
We can do a
1v1?
full on
I'm
2v2.
confused.
Let these two people up.
If you
They
can
were
mute-
active
if you can
together.
mute
Let
Lane,
them up. Let them up.
if you can mute
It's
Lane,
fully
I can
safe.
get
It's
out
fully
the main
diverse.
Kuro
I don't know
especially
why.
that me and
I don't know
Kyrus
why
especially
you're
already
letting
came
this
to
nigga
agreement.
Demar
He's
tell
trying to
you,
mention
hey,
my
let's have a
partner.
1v1.
He's
This
trying
and
to
that
mention
shit.
my partner and don't even know that me and my partner already came to agreement that we're gonna do the 1v1 state 2v2 style. Meaning they're gonna be me and Lane first. Meaning they're gonna be
He
me and
literally
Lane.
just
It's
said
gonna
in
be
chat. He
him
literally
and
just said in chat.
Apex.
2v2
It's
X
still gonna
Storm
be a
duos versus duos.
2v2.
He literally just said in
It's gonna be more of a
chat. He literally
2v2.
just said in chat. Make
All
up
right,
your
y'all,
mind, because right now there is a big
how about
agreement.
this? Both y'all, shit. How about this? How about both of y'all then 1v1 after y'all done, then Saber and Kyrus can do y'all 1v1. How about that?
Why not make it tag team style?
Exactly. Why not?
I bet.
Why
I
not?
bet. That's Gucci.
Because we
I
want
bet.
that.
I got you. I was good. I bet. I bet.
Yeah,
Okay,
good to see up as well.
go
Alright, there we
ahead.
go.
I'm Karos. Who's gonna start off first between me and you, Karos?
Why you keep
Well,
down? What the fuck? I bet.
There you
Let me
go.
unmute
I'm
you.
used to bro. I'm used to
Karos.
I got you,
He's
bro.
not gonna.
Karos. Who you want to start first?
All right.
Karos.
So, what's the topic first? Let's get
Hey,
this.
before we start, do
Cyrus.
y'all we ask the judge?
Yeah, sure. Why
Yes.
not?
Oh,
Why not? All right,
okay.
Carlos. So, I've already debated upon the
Karos.
biblical scripture with Demar a lot of times. I'm kind of bored of it. Do you want
Karos.
to debate
Hold
on
on,
the
hold
Trinity?
on.
Because I
Hold on,
see
Karos.
in your bio
Karos, who you
and
want
stuff,
to
you have a
start
lot of
first?
triune related
Damar,
stuff.
you said
Where
we're
the
gonna
fuck did he
debate
go?
You said you're gonna send two of these, right?
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
So,
I'm Karos, you want me to start first?
You can start off, and then I'll help.
I bet. Okay, sure. All right, Karos, head up. Don't head up. If you ever bring up the Trinity, if you ever bring up the Trinity, argue the Trinity, and Tawhid. I put him on a foundation where he's gonna have to
are you
argue
what?
why Allah has So update. So to heads up, Karos, when he get around to you, if he ever try to debunk the Trinity, put him in a stance where he's gonna have to argue for Allah having 99 attributes, and then try to argue the 99 attributes as the same as the Trinity. And then I'm gonna
Okay.
send you the verses for them too. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and start off, Lane. So where do you want to start at, Lane? Go ahead.
Cool. So, all I want to go over is the real distinctions and conceptual distinctions about the Trinity. Okay.
I
So,
don't believe
as
in
we
a
know,
Trinity.
if the Father and the
Wrong.
Son are
I
ontologically
don't believe in a
distinct, then of
Trinity.
course there are three. Right.
Lane, I don't believe
Now,
in a
as we
Trinity.
know, these real
Lane,
distinctions
I
they
don't
don't
believe
exist.
in a
You don't invite
Trinity.
them within the Trinity. Now they of
Lane,
course
I don't believe in a
are
Trinity.
contradictory. Whoa.
Lane, I don't
I
believe
felt
in a
like someone's
Trinity.
talking. Hello.
Lane, I don't believe in the Trinity.
You don't believe in the Trinity.
No.
But Kyro's
Basically,
here.
I'm trying to say that
Aren't we
he a non
not fixed on one topic?
I'm going.
Aren't we fixed on one topic? We haven't even agreed on a fix on one topic. I literally said we can do the Trinity
I
and both
mean,
of
I
you were
already
talking
told you. I
about it.
already told you. I already told you your mashup. First of all, the mashup just Islam versus the Bible doctrine in general. Second of all, I already told you that your target going to be me.
What
Kuros
is
is
the
going to
Bible
mainly be
doctrine?
going
What is
against.
the Bible doctrine?
I'm an
Are you
Israelite.
Unitarian?
No, I'm an Israelite.
You're an Israelite.
Yes, I only believe in one God, and that's the Most High. So
Okay, so
go ahead.
so you're a Unitarian.
I
That's
mean,
not
you
a
can say something
Unitarian.
like
You
that.
say Hebrew Israelite. That's not the same, bro. Are you wrong? That's not even close. A Hebrew Israelite is not Unitarian. Hebrew Israelites believe black people are the true Jews. Native Americans, Spanish speaking groups.
Thank you, so Kuros. So I'm going to be arguing you.
Yeah,
I'm going to argue
yeah.
on
Sorry,
this.
hold on,
Hold
hold
on,
on.
hold on.
That is an ethical part. Wait, chill. That is an ethical part because I don't know that is absolutely nothing to do with the ontology of God. Lock in, please.
Mute Saber.
Oh,
So
okay.
Lane, I'm going to tell you the point on which I want to argue with you on which you're going to argue with me, right? You also, so you're a Muslim, so you also believe that the Ishmaelite would be the true people of God. So this one for the issue. So this one for the have to ask you, right? How can we believe or uphold to the Quranic doctrine which were written by and given to what y'all like to call an Ishmaelite, which would be Muhammad, when the Quran also states that the Ishmaelites ain't even the true people of God, but the true people of God is the Israelites. So even the Quran itself confirmed that the true people of God isn't even the Ishmaelite, which is, would be the, Quranic doctrine. So that's what I'm going to argue on that basis. I'm just going to attack your whole doctrine's completion. If I can debunk the source, then they debunk your doctrine. So for the argue on that, historical. I don't care about doctrine, bro.
Okay. Look. So you're telling me that the Quran tells Jews and Christians to follow their scriptures, but those
that's not my point.
Islam, right?
That's not my point. No, that's not my point.
No. Because you directly said if revelation was given to the Israelites, why reject Judaism or Christianity? Is that what I'm getting with? Because please make your point clear. That's what you said verbatim. Unless you're just trying to talk ambiguous.
First of all, I didn't brought up anything about Judaism and Christianity at all. I was arguing from a context of the people of the people regarding race or ethnicity. That's why I bring up Israelites, and that's why I brought up Ishmaelites. Ishmaelites will be the Arabs, or what we like to call the people who are Muslims in today, which worship, the Quran. The Israelites, which we know would be the people who also believe that the Bible was and the Word of God was naturally given to them, and they would be the true people of God. So I'm going to argue from a context of who is actually the true people of God according to the Quran. I don't care about the Bible right now. I'm arguing strictly off your Quranic basis. And what I'm trying to tell you, and my point is this: the Quran itself confirms that the true people of God is the Israelites. The Quran itself confirms that the prophecy or that the covenant, when talking about the people or talking about the national, was given to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and then given to the 12 tribes of Jacob. Nowhere in that mention anything about the Ishmaelites. So why should we believe that an Ishmaelite was a prophet in regarding of Muhammad, when the Quran itself also confirmed that the message will only be given to the Israelites? So there will inherently be a contradiction right there. So I'm arguing off a historical context, nothing doctrinal. So you can understand my point better.
All right, cool. So look here. Let's go over Abraham's lineage. All right. The issue is not race, because the Quran never says only Israelites can receive the revelation. I don't know where you're getting that from. And Ishmael is literally Abraham's son in the Bible too, right? So the problem is that, look here, in the book of Genesis.
All the prophets for
wait, chill. Whoa. Why is he already interjecting? Didn't you say you wanted to talk?
Okay, my bad.
All right, cool. Abraham had two major sons, Isaac and Ishmael. Ishmael is still Abraham's biological son. He is still blessed by God and promised by a great nation. This is in the book of Genesis. Look, let's go over one of your verses. 17:20. Genesis 17:20. As for Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I have blessed him and will make him fruitful and multiply him greatly. So even biblically, Ishmael is a part of the Abrahamic lineage. God blesses him and a nation comes from him. So saying nothing about Ishmaelites receiving anything from God. Look, the covenant through Isaac does not mean no prophet came from Ishmael. The problem with this is that the Hebrew Bible, we can agree on what the Hebrew Bible focuses on. It heavily focuses on Isaac, Jacob, Israel, the Israelites, because it is literally not Israelite religious history.
You said Genesis chapter 1.
All of that does not mean. Didn't you want a talking stick? The fuck are you doing?
No, I'm asking you, but yeah, you brought up a source, and I have every right to interject when I'm asking you. Can you point out a specific source for me? So I'm asking you. Said Genesis chapter what? Because I appeal to 1611 King James Bible, by the way. So Genesis chapter what?
Genesis chapter 17:20 or verse 20.
All right, let me go. Okay, let me go to chapter 17:20 right quick.
As for Ishmael, I've heard you. Behold, I bless him and will make him fruitful and multiply him greatly.
17, chapter 17, verse what?
20.
Verse what? All right, I got you. And of course, I'm going to start a little bit before that, because something Muslims like to do is they don't actually like to read the context of the whole full, chapter. They just like to point out specific verses. Okay, that's where it's talking about Ishmael right quick. Okay, and I got the debunk to that. Okay, already. So you can go ahead and finish.
Like I was saying, all right, that does not mean, all right, just because the Hebrew Bible, yes, it heavily focuses on Jacob, Israel, and the Israelites. I've already said this, right? Because it is literally Israelite religious history. That does not mean God can never send another prophet outside of Israel. Even the Bible itself has non-Israelite figures connected to God. For example, Melchizedek, Job, Jethro. I'm sure that's how you pronounce it right. And in Christianity as well, the concept of salvation becomes more generalized or universalized. I think that's the right term, right? Beyond the ethnic part of Israel. Anyway, so the claim that all prophecy must remain ethnically, all prophecy must remain ethnically Israelite forever. It's not even consistent. That is upheld across Abrahamic religions or Abrahamic traditions. I'm still not done with my point, by the way, because look, Islam agrees with many prophets coming through Israel. It does not deny this at all. Actually, Islam strongly agrees that even Solomon was Israelite.
I don't care about that point. Stay on the point.
I'm staying on the point. What do you mean? I'm staying on the point. I'm staying on the point. You
We
said,
talking about with the covenant. I don't care about the rest of the
yeah,
covenant.
yeah. We are talking about the covenant. We are talking about the covenant.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Strictly with
The
strictly
Quran's
with
position is that
strictly with
Abraham was
Ishmael.
before ethnic divisions. What are you talking about? It deliberately centers Abraham rather than ethnicity. Abraham existed before Judaism and Christianity as their identities. And it says he submitted to God purely, which is a Hanif. What are you talking about?
Are you done? You done?
I can be done right now. Like, I don't see
You
anything
done?
wrong with my point.
Bro, you done, bro? Just because you yapping
Of
right now.
course, bro, I can be done right now. Sure, you can go ahead.
All right. Can you go ahead and mute yourself right quick? All right. Thank you. All right. So let me go ahead and tell you how to put BTA to a Muslim who just can't read. So I'm gonna go ahead and read chapter 20 for you. Then I'm gonna go into chapter 21, which again just confirm on my stance on which I'm arguing. So to give context on my stance, right? When I'm arguing about the chosen people of God, right? I'm also obviously I'm arguing about the covenant on which God gave to Abraham. So for the start with Genesis chapter 1 verse 20, it says right here, and as for Ishmael, I have heard thee. Behold, I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful and multiply him exceedingly. 12 princes shall he begot, and I will make him a great nation. But if you go to chapter 21, where God distinguishes that yes, he gave blessings to every nation. He even gave blessings to the Edomite when he blessed them with the sword, and I can give you that verse in that chapter when it's talk about Jacob, and Edom being, when it was born like two nations within a, stomach. I don't know if you actually know that story, but to go ahead and debunk that right quick, I don't disagree with the fact that God gave a blessing to Ishmael. God gave a blessing to the Edomite. God gave a blessing to the Cushite. I believe God gave a blessing to all races. They have nothing with being God chosen people. As we can see in verse 21, when God says, but my covenant will I establish with Isaac, which Sarah shall be for until thee at this set time in the next year. And he left off talking with him. God went up from Abraham, and Abraham took Ishmael his son, and all that were born in his house, and that they were bought with his money, every male amongst the men of Abraham's house, and circumcised to the flesh and the foreskin, for such way as God said unto them. But I don't have to keep reading, because you can see early on, I already gave you the confirmation that yeah, just because God gave you a blessing, that doesn't necessarily make you God chosen people. And matter of fact, let me just go ahead and switch it to the Quran right quick. So we can go to Surah Hud. We can go to Surah Hud, and we can go to Surah Al Abanon. I don't know if I'm reading this, but this will be Surah 21, Ayah 72, and it says, and we blessed him with Isaac as his son, and Jacob as his grandson, as additional favor, making all of them righteous. And this right here come from the Quran. So this is my question to you. If Ishmael was his chosen people, and if Ishmael was a part of that lineage, like you try to argue, why do your Quran only mention Isaac and Jacob as a part of that covenant when he making all of them righteous instead of mentioning Ishmael? I don't disagree with Ishmael being a prophet. You can argue that all you want. That's not my disagreeing. I don't disagree with Ishmael being given a blessing. You can argue that all you want. That's not going to debunk my point. My point is strictly about the covenant on which he gave to Abraham, about the lineage of God. And you trying to, and my argument is this: if you trying to argue Ishmael is a part of that covenant, then you're gonna have to show some evidence in order to verify that. Because I gave you some evidence from Genesis chapter 1, verse 21, and you tried to point to verse 20, and verse 21 debunks your argument right there. And then I gave you one from the Quran, and the Quran itself still confirmed what Genesis is saying within my Bible. So now you can go ahead and go and give your points now.
All right, cool. So now I know what you're trying to say, but it's still pretty retarded. Okay, you're trying to say that the covenant in Genesis is specifically through Isaac, Jacob, and Israel. Therefore, Islam contradicts itself by later elevating Ismail and Muhammad. Look, here's the thing. He doesn't refute anything because, well, it does actually refute something only if you assume that the biblical covenant only means Israelites can receive revelation, and God can never send a prophet outside Isaac's line, and the covenant with Isaac
That's not my
excludes Ishmael from future spiritual significance forever. None of those are actually stated at all, right? Because you're confusing way too many things, and even though you may seem like you're not conflating these two, right? You are. Covenant lineage and prophethood are the two things you're conflating. They are not identical. In the book of Genesis, the covenant nation is indeed centered on, as again, Isaac, Jacob, and Israel, right? We as Muslims do not deny this, obviously. The children of Israel received many prophets, as we know. Islam fully agrees. But where does Genesis say no prophet will ever come from Ishmael? It doesn't. It doesn't at all, right? For example, Ishmael is still blessed and tied to Abraham's promise. Of course, as we know, we don't disagree upon this. Genesis chapter 17, verse 20 says God will bless Ishmael, multiply him greatly, make him a great nation. That matters. And the reason that matters is because our Prophet ﷺ in Islam comes from the Ishmaelite Adams. So what Islam is trying to convey here is that Isaac's line received the Israelite prophetic tradition. And not only that, his line later received the final prophet. Those are not mutually exclusive at all. The covenant being through Isaac does not equate to something being exclusive to race forever. This is a fatal flaw in your logic, okay? And maybe this is because you're illiterate and retarded and an IQ and you're a fucking moron, but who knows at the end of the day. The Mars intelligence is very ambiguous, am I right? Look, non-Israelites can know God, non-Israelites
that's not my argument, by the way.
can receive divine favor, right? And as you know, I've gave multiple examples. One example I would like to give is Nineveh and the story of Jonah, right? And Christianity itself also later generalizes this beyond Israel. So the idea of God only working through Israel forever or eternity is not even consistent in any form of scripture at all. And nor does the Quran say that Ishmael replaced Isaac, you fucking moron. Okay? This is important because you're trying to make a claim and then attack and refute that Islam doesn't even make. The Quran honors the children of Israel and Jacob. For example, look in the Quran, chapter 21, verse 72. I forgot the exact surah this was, but look at that verse. It says, we granted him Isaac and Jacob as an additional gift. As we know, that's what you were pointing to, right? That verse is praising Israelite line. That is exactly what you're referring to, right? But how the fuck is that a contradiction? Islam agreeing that Isaac and Jacob were specifically blessed does not mean Ishmael cannot also be blessed or produce a prophet later.
Wait, hold on.
Because...
Hold on. If you say, all right, I'm going to interject here. If you're going to say that that Jacob and I think Isaac were being blessed, we can simply just, Damar consistently prove that the Bible affirms that the blessings. In fact, we can actually go to scripture. Hold on, let me get the verse. Yeah. Genesis 21:12 and Romans 9:7 talk about how Isaac, right? The blessing of the lineage is going to come through him. And Damar consistently proved that as well. So we can simply just take a frequentist position here and just say that the most observed occurrences are going to be the more consistent outcome of his proposition, right? We can use the precedence diagram method to prove that each of these arguments signify a logical relationship between one another because he explained, right? You know what arrows are in math? Arrows are in math explain like the logical dependencies of a task. And he also used the weights in mathematics. Weights in mathematics give the duration capacity of a task. So Damar proves his argument is sequential, which you have failed to defeat. And for your argument, we can simply just say essentially that you never even proved their proposition is close and compacted. So we can just say using the extreme value theorem, essentially that your argument, it could exist, but there's nothing that makes it sequential. So there's going to be a null set and your argument is invalid.
All right, look here, you redundant retard. Look here. The Israelite line received many prophets. While Islam, of course, teaches the final prophet came from the Ishmael's line. There's no contradiction unless you assume without scripture or textual proof that God can only work through Israelites forever.
Can I respond to that?
Now wait, chill. Since Kairos the retard would ask Mike and entire fucking words and sentences were unable to be read. Wait. Actually, let's Seba interject for now, since Kairos was able to interject as well. Let's Seba interject upon everything.
But that was a reasonable interjection, though.
You couldn't even defeat my argument.
Okay.
I have. What do you mean? Unless you assume
Calm down.
My turn to speak. Okay, Kairos, excuse me if I heard the argument right. You said these arrows inside math, arrows inside math.
You don't
prove his argument. First of all, right, you retard, that's called logical fucking calculus. When you sit there and say an arrow is used to connect a logical fucking argument, you retarded fuck. That's a logical fucking connector. You don't understand that shit.
What the fuck, bro?
No.
Stop trying to interject. Stop trying to interject. No.
Because you're straw man.
My mic gain. No, hold on. You want to try and interrupt? Right?
No, allow my game.
Wait, I'm on. Mute Kairos, bro. Mute Kairos. He's always trying to interject. What is he doing?
Bro,
Like, bro,
hold
it's
on.
my turn to
So
speak.
reasonable
Why is everybody trying to
interjection.
cut me off? No,
Alright, everyone,
calm
Hey,
down.
stop.
you're being a dumbass as usual. Dumbass
It's my
nigga.
turn to
Bro,
speak.
stop.
I don't
Holy
care.
shit!
Let's say
Seba's not even done with this point. Stop fucking
Lane, go
interjecting.
on mute. Go on mute. You just talked,
Bro,
Kamar. You can't be making fun of anything.
bro, Carlos,
Calm down.
stop.
We know you're emotional
Lane,
because of
Let's
Muhammad.
Amon,
bro.
just
Calm
mute him.
down.
Amon, just mute him.
When
Deadass, you can
Muhammad
mute him.
tried, he was here all
Amon,
night.
just mute him.
When Muhammad tried, stop getting emotional, bitch.
Alright, bro.
Okay,
Thank God.
finally. Okay. I know. And make sure Damar is muted too because he kept trying to unmute too. I saw that mic peeking out, bro. Can you mute him too? Please and thank you. Amon.
Alright, quick. I'm gonna just talk and stick with y'all too.
Can you just mute Damar? Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. So you were mentioning like how he proved his argument with like these logical connectors. Okay. So firstly, let's get this straight. Okay. Sure, you can have a logically connecting. Okay. That's called validity, you dumbass. Validity is not the same as soundness. Okay, I'm gonna make this important distinction to you, right? Validity and soundness hold two separate things. Okay, when you sit there and talk about logical soundness, it talks about truth. Validity is a following argument that falls under the premises and etc. Right? So it doesn't inherently prove the proposition is true. It doesn't prove the proposition because we're talking about something corresponding to reality or talk about the viewpoints in this metaphysical view about reality and the views about the religion in question, right? So it's just gonna hold or adhere from of course, a historical system as well. Concerned that was like the main part of your argument, or Damar's part of the argument was historical like systems as well. He brought up something like historical before we even began the debate. He said that's just going to be a system. Um, yeah, that's just going to have to be something corresponding to reality. So we would have to go based upon reality and not something virtual like math. There's a virtual distinction. There's an ontological distinction. You're conflating the two distinctions and creating this some type of I don't know big fucking mess because you're a retard, right? And to get over the other points, by the way, I want to interject with you, by the way. And you're talking about proving proposition, as I said. If you're conflating this, right? This is bad. This is bad, okay? What do you mean oh, never mind. Bathroom break? Bathroom break.
Whoa, holy fuck, chill. Oh,
Amon, do you
what
mind if I
the fuck
respond
was
to his
that?
point?
Alright, quick. Alright, quick.
Amon, do you mind? Amon, do you mind if I respond?
What
Yeah,
was
sure.
that?
Yeah,
What the
because
fuck?
it was my argument that I brought up. Do you mind muting both of them?
Yeah, I mean both of them.
Okay, thank you,
I'm doing
thank you.
talking stick. So
All right,
yeah.
so
So
So thank you. All right, so I want to go ahead and bring up one point he brought up, which is interests me. He brought up some was how do it maps onto reality, right? And I like that, right? Because I like those odds within my favor. The problem is, right, that if you want to actually argue from history and want to argue on how it maps onto reality, the problem with that you also lose that category. So I'm going to argue on three basic points to go ahead and get evidence. First, let's go on to the messengers of God. Let's go on to the messengers of God right quick. And people, some of these people are minor messengers, but let's go on to it. We got Adam, we got Noah, we got Abraham, we got Lot, we got Isaac, we got Jacob, we got Joseph, we got Moses, we got Isaiah, we got Jeremiah, we got Ezekiel, we got Hersey, we got Joel, we got Amos, we got Joan, we got Malachi, we got Moran, we got Deborah, we got Hannah, we got Haldea, and then if you want to keep going, we got John the Baptist, we got John the Baptist, and we got Jesus of Nazareth, right? And then if you want to go into some of the great kings like Solomon and David, which wasn't really messengers, they were more so kings and stuff. The problem with all these people, bro, is that every single last one of these people would have come from a Pacific Israelite group of the 12 tribes, so all of them would have been Israelites until we got to after Jesus, for a couple hundred years after Jesus, and then that's just when we get that's just when we get Muhammad. So So the problem with this and how it don't match onto reality on how it would be more likely when you want to go based off a historical context on why Muhammad wouldn't necessarily be a prophet, because I don't actually believe Muhammad was a prophet, by the way. It because simply based off this, every prophet until the time of Muhammad was simply an Israelite. When you even go to the Quran itself, and I'm gonna go ahead and bring this up right quick. Let me go see where it says right here. It says right here, "O children of Israel," and this is from the Quran. This Surah chapter 2 in Al-Baqarah. This Surah 2 ayah 122, and it says, "O children of Israel, remember my favors upon you. Remember my favors upon you, and how I honored you above the others." And then we can go into the context or the period of time during Muhammad's life where he actually owned a black Israelite slave, and he also sold that slave for a person who was a Muslim instead. But in your Quran, we see a picture of your own God saying that he honored the Israelites above all others, which will also be taken into consideration of the tribe of Ishmael, which is what Muhammad would have been. So I don't think if Allah actually honored the children of Israel, like Allah is saying within your Quran, that he would let a prophet, that he would let a person who enslaved a black Israelite even be a prophet, let alone sell one for a person who wasn't even an Israelite or he was tribe of Ishmael, but he wasn't even an Israelite. He wasn't even an Israelite, meaning that Muhammad was going according to the flesh, not the spirit, by the way. So that was already a great sin according to your Quran doctrine. So that's already a contradiction of doctrine basis alone. But not only that, he would be going against the chosen people of Israel. And then we can bring in the Saharan slave trade. We can bring in the Muslim slave trade. The problem with this, bro, and why we came and how we know that y'all doctrine isn't true, and how we know Muhammad isn't necessarily one of the chosen people of or to be a prophet, that even if we were to go to the Quran, I can go give you another surah which said that anyone who goes against the children of Israel going to have to suffer the same cost, meaning that the people who enslaved the children of Israel going to also have to be enslaved. If Muhammad is truly a fucking prophet and he's the child of Ishmael, and the Ishmaelites was a group of people who enslaved the Israelites, why would your own God be telling his own prophet that no, in the final times you're going to have to get enslaved? That makes zero sense. Rule number 2, based off historical costs and historical evidence alone, you have no foundation to prove that Muhammad actually gave any prophecy to even be a prophet, because before he gave a prophecy, he actually died. Number three, when a Judah lady gave Muhammad the poison and said that if you are truly a prophet of Allah, then you will survive this poison, what happened in Muhammad's deathbed? He died. And then what story did the disciples of Muhammad made up after that they went to war about because they couldn't agree on the chapters of Muhammad passages? They tried to make up the lie and said that no, he was actually talking to God, or he was talking to Gabriel or one of the spirits, and that Muhammad himself wanted to die. But I got no historical evidence for that, because no one was there, because no one was in the room when Muhammad died. So who gave us that if Muhammad died? What other prophet came after? Because the disciples surely wasn't righteous, because they couldn't even agree on the 12 chapters. You see what I'm saying, right? When you stick to historical basis, when you go based on real world evidence, nothing that the Muslims say makes any fucking sense, because you can't map it onto reality, which is why they have to stay in turn with the context. So that is my argument. And to debunk what's the name said, my bad for yapping, but a lot of people was talking instead of actually letting me respond. And I was trying to interject before Kuros talked to actually tell him that wasn't my point. My point is that this: I don't even care about prophethood. If you can actually give some form of evidence that Ishmael was a prophet, and real world evidence, like showing me some of his testimony, showing me some of his messages and passages that he actually wrote that we have from other messengers, right? Because he wasn't during the time of when they were going by word of mouth. He wasn't even during the time of Noah. He was during the time of Moses and them. So there should be something written about him, but there's not.
Yo,
And that's the fucking
Demar,
problem. So my point isn't that, hold on. So my point isn't that there isn't other people who chosen outside of race. My point is just this, that the Israelites are the chosen people of God when it comes to race and ethnicity. My point has nothing to do with doctrine. My point has nothing to do with prophethood. So when you brought up that shit don't even debunks me from the get-go. My point is strictly about who are the chosen people of God, because Muslims hold the doctrine that the Ishmaelites are the chosen people of God. But when you point to your Quran been debunking you the whole fucking time. Now, Kuros, do you want to pick it back off of what I said? Because I know you had to say something there. After Kuros talk, then you can
I
pass it
was
to
gonna
them, since we're doing talking stick.
Saba, like, with his demonic rambling, he like strawmanned a lot of what I said. So okay, so again, I'm just gonna pick up on. I'm just gonna talk about what Saba said, and also gonna talk about the Ishmaelites for Demar. So first of all, Saba, I was not talking about calculus. I was talking about SQL equivalences. That's what I was talking about in arrows in math. And again, what you don't understand because you failed in math is that when you have like a function, right, in SQL equivalences, arrows signify like it signifies the dependencies of said task. It helps make something sequential, right? Also, I wanted to get back to it. This is not virtual math because I can prove it to you. I can simply just take I can appeal to sequential logic here and just say an object has a state of current affairs when it has storage of past events. Like, let me give you an analogy. If I go to a toggle switch, I press the button, the light turns on. All right, sure. And then I press it and it turns off again. Then that's because the machine remembered the previous condition. And there's three parts to this. There's the current state where the system is right now. The input is what the order the system receives. And then the next state, the resulting state after the input is received. And the next state will actually, in mathematical equation, the delta will be like think towards the end of that. So that signifies that. I can see a screenshot of that too. And we know that the next state is a perpetual change because the current was essentially determined by the previous state of said object. And how this correlates is because to make something, to make an argument sequential, for one of the things you would need is you would have to prove that the transitional function logically follows, which is what I just said. And this is not virtual math because, again, your argument is presupposing that a proposition is not a stochastic variable contingent upon the outcomes of a sample space. That's why you have to prove that's a true element within a function, because if you can't, then it's just going to be null and invalid, which is what I'm talking about. If you said, just since you called it virtual math, then I can unironically just say you have no basis to argue against my skepticism. Because if you're saying it's virtual math, which I just give an analogy of how the next state is a perpetual chain contingent upon the outcomes of the previous thing, then essentially you would just be conceding to me because you would be rejecting the weights, which signify the duration capacity of each task, which would mean that the set within the function is not closed and compacted, since you're literally rejecting the concept of duration capacity, and you would also not even be able to give it a category as well. So yeah, so I'm just gonna call this out as a null set, and you render your own argument invalid, and you have no basis to argue against it. You can go ahead and tap.
Good job, Kuros, by the way. My bad. Damn, Alma, you can go ahead and let them speak now.
All right, let me unmute them. Okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna go first, basically. Okay, basically against your point about sequential logic. So you do realize when you take note about these actions in the first place, and how these sequence events go down in order, you realize, right? Taking first part and connecting these orders chronologically speaking, and you're acknowledging like within an argument, right? When you're making the argument and you're talking about like, say for example, I'll give an example, right? And let's just say, you know, screw the fucking example, but the whole point is that the distinction or what's being made for the argument is still virtual in that sense. You said arrows in math, okay? Arrows, right? Conditionals. Conditionals, okay. A conditional statement or operative, right? And sure, you taking the fact about the conditional and not referring to the specific objective thing, if you want to talk about correspondence to reality of course would obviously have to be in that sense objectively existing in the sense when you talk about that, state of existing, the act of existing, right? The part about the chronological part is that it's not the same as the action. When you sit there and say it's a conditional, it's still virtual. You're dubbing this as the conditional add up to this. That's still your virtual state, and that's what you would label that as. You don't sit there and say a conditional would objectively exist because obviously it's just a set of actions which would be labeled as, of course, a conditional which would add to that. That's like sequential things. Like that's what it is. You can't just sit there and then sit there and say, well, oh yeah, it's objective, but then conflate that specific set of actions with the terminology in itself to refer to it, or slap some type of epistemic awareness as to what the set of actions is, objectively speaking, as per I made the distinction between when you say math. If you don't think math is subjective, or when you sit there and, of course, do this type of math, like say for example, statement or language, conditional operators are some type of language, like if and then that, that's like language. So I would assume if you view these things as objective, you would take those types of things as real, or take like some type of commitment towards semantical realism if you take statements like that true, because it's not the label that's true. The conditionals do not exist. That's the whole fucking point. It's the objective state of actions. And if you want to sit there and say that he proved this, by the way, what's corresponding to reality? Like, let's just say, for example, okay, when you sit there and say this corresponds, right? As I said, it would have to be within reality, objectively existing within the reality. I previously defined that and gave analytics for that, and how that's just going to be, of course, definitionary approach. The actions, I made that distinction. Yes, let's get that checked out, right? And then moving on, right? We're gonna move on. Okay, we're gonna move on. We're taking things slow because you decided to drag time. Okay. More importantly, is that when you say arrows in math, right? You do realize that conditionals are also like logical connectors. I mean, like they're they're still logical. Like, okay, so let's just get this out of the way. Okay, so why are you sending emoji in such chat? What are you doing? Right. Okay, so as I said, when you sit there and say conditionals are like, say for example, if P and then not P, and not P is the case, then P obviously wouldn't be the case, and not P is the case. That's a more singular approach to sitting there saying that's just gonna be the case. That's a conditional. Then you're using that logical connective, right? That conditional is a logical connective for that. That's still a logical connective. And if you're referring to sequential logic, I can't pronounce that right because yeah, whatever. But point is that this still works as logical connectors. It connects statements. It connects propositions in that sense. Things that you would rather take, like something like obviously as a proposition under these specific type of things to avoid contradictions. You're taking out the contradictions. You're viewing something as true. If this is the case, blah blah blah. It's still logical connectives, right? Doesn't defeat my points about validity and etc. Because you said he was making an argument using these things. I would rather point out that this is still going towards something following from these types of things. These are conditionals, they're following, they're supposed to follow, right? The condition, like when you talk about an argument and it follows, or you're using this to prove an argument, right? The argument has to follow as well, to even be like structured correct, instead of just like mainly the proposition when you talk about it, or the substance for it. Like the argument, right? You said he laid out an argument and he proved an argument, right? So I'm expecting an argument. And when you said he used logical arrows, and then you mentioned sequentials or conditionals still act as logical connectives. They're still connected. You could use these to find validity because that would follow and etc. Right? I gave an example that would follow. Okay. And I made the distinction between soundness. You could sit there and say that these things fall, right? Like within reality. It doesn't like actually prove it follows within reality. It's just according to the argument. Like you can have an argument that's following by itself and that it's true to itself, right? By being following, it's like logically valid in that sense. Therefore, it's true that it's logically valid to itself, right? But it doesn't prove that's logically sound, right? So there's like truth in different ways here, right? If you get like what I'm saying, like the validity part is that the argument is true to itself. It would take itself as true and per valid, but not inherently true. Like that's the main part you would take if you were to sit there and say it follows, right? Logically valid. Right? This is why your boyfriend is a demographic. Okay, but anyways, yeah, I believe I just made my point clear and just, of course, responded to it.
Let me.
That's not saying this shit, by the way.
Let me unmute.
Yo, alright, cool. So now to make way for Siva, right, and to try and dismantle these two retards that don't know how to read, that don't know how to explain shit, right? I'm just gonna go over the basis, okay? You two, well, most Lily Demar, right, was jumping between about 6 different forms, and that was, I'm pretty sure, the preservation of sources, race, morality, theology, history, and logic. Now, just to give some clarity, right? Not a surprise coming from me since I'm on Siba's side, okay? Right? But my boyfriend, as Cairo says, is actually correct about validity versus soundness, and Cairo is actually retarded, right? Because a logically valid argument can still be false if the premises are false. So when Siba is saying that, or when either of you, Kairos or Damar, are saying the prophet is false because Israelites were chosen, the conclusion does not follow unless, of course, you two retards first prove that chosen in this context means eternally exclusive to the race forever, right? And unless, of course, you prove three other things: that God cannot send non-Israelite prophets later, that the Quran teaches racial exclusivity, and that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself contradicts previous revelations, right? My friend has not established those presents or premises. My bad, right? Now let's dismantle the rest of what they said. Of course, let's go over Damar real quick. I think Siba pretty much already bullied Kairos on his point, so I'm gonna go over Damar. Right? Earlier, Damar argued that the covenant is through Isaac. Then he says my point has nothing to do with prophecy. I don't know if this guy is retarded or maybe he's talking about a completely different fucking religion, but the entire attack on our Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the greatest man who has ever lived on this planet and the greatest man who will ever be on this planet, depends on prophecy. Because the issue right here is only that the Israelites were favored historically, right? Because as we know, that claim, Islam agrees with that, okay? The Quran literally says Allah favored the children of Israel above nations historically, right? We can go over this. As Damar said, the chapter is chapter 2, verse 47. So you cannot use that as a contradiction because Muslims already affirm that previous claim, okay? His real argument is actually only Israelites can legitimately receive revelation. But guess what? He's never fucking proven that. Why? Take a guess. A retard or just missed something. It's most likely the first one, okay? Now, his other point was conflating completely different things, and I think he conflates a bunch of different things after. He says chosen people means racial supremacy. This is like at first, the reason why I wasn't exactly going forward with this was because this could not have been his point. This could not have been his point because there is no way, especially for Damar, there is no fucking way that somebody can say this much retarded shit. But no, sadly, he actually is, and I couldn't be surprised if Damar is actually autistic and has bipolar disorder, alright? Because in both the Bible and the Quran, okay, chosenness is tied to covenant and obedience. It's not unconditional racial superiority for eternity. No, right? The Bible, the Hebrew Bible, any variation itself shows that Israel is being punished, exiled, and condemned by multiple other people and prophets repeatedly. So chosen is never meant to be like, oh, they can never go astray or God can never work through others. That's not even the context of what it's saying. Like even Christianity, like let's just go over Christianity because this is the biggest part of his role, right? It breaks his framework because the religion expands beyond ethnic Israel completely, right? And the reason this is because of his, his retardation with the historical correspondence argument. He said that historically every prophet before Muhammad, every prophet before the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam corresponds to reality. This is inconsistent because Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, all these other people, Jacob, are not historically verifiable in the modern, academic sense, and the modern carbon dating, actually, no, that's for fossil sense, either. They're just not in any of that, in the archaeological sense, okay, or with archaeological or historical proof. For many biblical events, as traditionally described, that is not the case for either one of them, right? So if he's demanding a strict modern historical verification for our prophet while accepting earlier prophets, then he is specially pleading, right? Now, ironically, our prophet is actually more historically attested than many earlier biblical figures, and I think we can agree on this, right? And he might call this redundant, but it actually isn't, because our prophet is accepted by secular historians as a real 7th century Arabian religious leader. Right? Now, he probably knows this, but he actually doesn't know that his argument was actually rejecting this because he's a fucking retard for the 5th time, right? Now, his slavery argument does not refute prophethood. Now, he tries to jump from slavery existed to therefore our prophet is false. There's no like first you would need to report you would need to prove four things once again. I believe four things. There could be more, right? You would need to report that the reports of in the hadiths or in any historical forum are authentic. You would need to prove that your interpretation is correct. You would need to provide the isnad chain for why these are authentic, and you would need to provide the action that contradicts the fine law. Because if you don't know how usul works, that is the main principle within usul, right? And especially Saqiya. Now, therefore, you're trying to conclude that therefore profit is impossible before that. You need to conclude and prove all of those four things. Actually, that's maybe even five things. Actually, right? Because look here, you skipped all of that, and something else you skipped is that slavery also existed in ancient Israel. It also existed in the Hebrew Bible. It existed in the Greek world, in the Roman world, in early Christianity, and the Bible itself contains regulations regarding slavery. So if slavery automatically disproves prophethood, then your own system or framework or whatever you're following, the own chain you're following, creates massive problems for biblical prophets too, right? Now, he says nobody was there around the place where Muhammad was passing away. Oh, sorry, again, where the Prophet was passing away, right? That is completely false because Islamic history and tradition, it records different companions and family members around him near his death, most notably Aisha. Right? Now, whether someone accepts those reports is another issue, but saying nobody was there is completely inaccurate because once again, you also have to verify that. Right? There is another completely different hadith that I'm sure is authentic about the Prophet laying on Aisha's lap and talking about his time coming to be when he's near his passing, right? Also, by the way, ancient history relies heavily on transmitted testimony, and by your standard, huge portions of ancient history would become impossible to know, right? And another thing. So finally, another thing. This is like the sixth time. I think Kairos was also forwarding this too. He keeps saying as well, the Quran debunks you. But you've not shown an actual contradiction because the contradiction would be something like this, right? This is the contradiction I'm pretty sure you're trying to favor for. But then you're going to gaslight us and tell us that you're not favoring for this contradiction. A contradiction would be the Quran says Israelites were never favored, and the Quran says Israelites were favored, right? That would be an easy contradiction. But it explicitly and consistently and persistently says that the Israelites were specifically favored or specially favored historically. But people can still lose favor through disobedience, altercation, corruption, etc., right? And guidance is not fucking racial, bro. Please, please, man, not with this. I've repeated this term 3 times. It's universal. Please, do not go over this again, right? So, in short, appealing to a historical correspondence selectively is inconsistent. All right, what the fuck? Anyway, because many earlier biblical prophets, of course, are not historically verifiable in any modern sense, right? And moral arguments about slavery, once again, do not automatically disprove prophethood. Of course, unless we're applying the same exact standards of biblical history too, right? Look, most Christians were non-Israelite. Paul himself, bro, you're God, man. Paul, you're God, universalized the covenant, and Gentiles also became central, right? So not even your interpretation is even universally accepted, even upon your own religion, right? Now, if you're trying to insist that the covenant through Israel means no non-Israelite prophet revelation can happen, then what I just said, literally right before, completely follows on through that, right? Because it's fucking false. You cannot do that and yet not apply that exact same standard consistently through biblical history, right? I'm pretty sure I'm done here. And whether if Aman is going to allow us.
Okay, I want to add one more point. I want to add one more point to Lane's thing, and more so, this is just gonna continue on. One more thing I had, like as like an internal critique towards Kairos's forward of his argument. So when he's using sequential logic, right? As I forwarded that, that's still like validity in that sense, right? And he's not talking about logical calculus. Logical calculus still heavily focuses on logical connectors. Conditionals can act as logical connectors for statements, which you probably don't know. It's just in natural language, right? A natural language more so doesn't really heavily focus on the language that logical calculus would focus on, right? Logical calculus focuses on symbolic stuff. It's symbolic logic, right? You used arrows, right? Arrows. Sure, sure. We can call conditionals errors. It still is the same thing. Conditionals are going to add on to that, and it's just going to more so make in the sense that if you say if this is the case, then moves on, blah blah blah, and you're representing this for like reality, right? As you said, you mentioned this is like the sequences within reality, right? Are just like some bringing this to this and then that because heavily, the logic you're using focuses on strict formal commandments to more so move on in terms of these types of conditions to process right to the next event, right? You need that determination that's formal, right? Formal, clear, the condition to be, following, right? The condition to follow and connect. That's the whole point of a conditional, to follow on from that. And this statement would obviously, more so move into this. And what's a good robust way to think about a conditional, right? So the good way I would say for a robust way to talk about a conditional is that, say for example, I have a bowl full of your mother's breast milk, okay? And then if I obviously have this breast milk, the condition is that the mother obviously has to have titties, right? There needs to be titties for me to get breast milk, right? That would be more so an indicator and a condition that's needed for this statement to follow through. So, right, there's titties. I grab those titties and I squeeze the fucking breast milk into the fucking bowl, you fucking retard, right? That would forward through these specific formal type of things, right? You fucking retarded fuck, okay? Right? And that's in types of natural language, right? It still has to follow that this would be the case, and then there's that condition. It has to follow, right? And let's just say, for example, that let's just say, right? I'm saying this, right? This is the conditional statement in question, right? It still has to connect this language has to connect and be formal, right? When you talk about conditionals, that's formal, right? When you talk about logical connectors, it has to be formal as well, because if it's informal, it's just open to interpretation or it's ambiguous, because informal is not the same as formal. Like formal is just clear. It's heavily, guided towards what it's supposed to mean. When you talk about informal things, it's not inherently having that type of properties. Well, I wouldn't say inherently because I don't want any type of like commitment to make. But what I'm trying to say is that the distinction would heavily lie in terms of its translation and what you're trying to get out of it, right? So when you use natural language, you can indeed use a conditional as a logical connective to indeed have this as following, right? Because I could say like P1, your mother's breast exists. P2, I grabbed your mother's breast, right? And those actions would have to be true for me to do it. Like, just say it has to be true that these breasts exist for me to grab that. Otherwise, it's not following. So the condition is that it has to be there, as I said, right? The condition has to follow, because if it doesn't follow, then how the fuck am I supposed to grab her titties and squeeze that breast milk, right? And by the way, I would indeed drink your mother's breast milk too. I would drink that bitch's fucking breast milk all fucking day, nigga, and you ain't gonna do shit about it too, right? And it's just bad because you're sitting there like a cuck. But anyways, as I was saying, yeah, that's like my type of way to analyze this, because I gave you a thing about P1, right? P1 has to have the breast there, as I said. It has to follow that the breasts are there. So it's connecting in that way to make it follow. It has to be valid in that sense, right? There's commitments to hold to. It has to be very formal about what you're saying. Because if I just sit there and say your mother's breasts are there, right? I can give another example about this type of thing. Your mother's breasts are there. Whose mother? Doesn't tell me who. If I'm trying to talk about your mother, I'm just saying your mother's breasts, right? Who's your? Are you your? Who am I speaking to? It doesn't define who the fuck I'm speaking to. It doesn't define it's your mother, right? That's another fucking example of that, right? Has to be fucking formal. Has to follow. Has to be very strict in that sense. I gave a similarities between logical calculus and etc.
Right, I
Right?
think you should let them go now, cause I'm not gonna like kind of seem like you hogging up the dialect, unbiasedly. But let me unmute them now. Alright,
I'm
but
already here. I'm already here. Tower.
For the love of God, first of all, why the nigga say the one twice. Secondly, he
I'm gonna
brought
let.
sucking through breast milk. He sucked the nigga James Charles left nut, and because he's a delusional as jihad, who got possessed by the same demon that possessed his bitch ass pedophile prophet, he got no
Hold on,
special
wait.
powers.
Second. Uh,
And
Alba, can you be?
I'm gonna argue against everything
Killa, so
too.
I'm gonna let you go first.
All right, yeah, sure. First of all, too. Second of all, too. Yeah, my nigga, I'm not no cuck. You're the cuck who's you and Lane are having wet dreams about kindergarten girls because y'all are dead ass weird ass pedophiles, just like your nasty ass prophet. And he's
Hey,
bragging about.
Kuros, listen. Also, let me tell you this: don't let them get you off your point. Don't let them,
Oh yeah,
just let them talk shit. Just stay
yes.
strictly to the point.
All right. So first of all, math is subjective. Listen, when we talk. And it's okay, you're a lark. You don't understand what math is because you're fucking illiterate. So when we talk about math, we can't just say, oh, realistically, in a mathematical equation, a lot of things can be proven. However, we can do math incorrectly. I can go on a piece of paper and say 5 plus 5 gives me like 100 million. For example, in math, when we want to make a function true, something
No, no, no.
100% true, have 100% probability of being true, then that said thing, if we get something that gives the probability like of one, then that would make that argument true. It would make it an element within a function. If we cannot, then it will be a null set. By doing that, we're proving the set is feasible, set, closed, and compacted, making the argument guaranteed and sequential. Secondly, Seba, I do not deny conditionals, but the issue is that this is a non sequitur because in the framework of SQL evidences, conditionals cannot, in fact, essentially have logical connectors. In fact, actually, when we talk about conditionals in the framework of SQL logic, we have to actually mention something, which I think you forgot to mention. So essentially, there's going to be something. For one, it needs to have a precedence diagram method, which show that each activity is connected, right, with the boxes with an arrow that links the logical relationships that shows things are to be performed. Remember the word to be performed. I know you're deaf in your left ear because you fucking sucked out each just left titty too hard and you blew your ear out like a good bitch. To be performed. You have low hearing comprehension. You can't track. Remember, president's diagram methods are to be performed, and you're talking about a conditional. Again, in SQL logic, you know what conditionals are called? Is your goddamn mark? They're called if functions. If there's multiple conditionals in a proposition, we call that nested if functions. You illiterate ass nigga, and you can go for a boyfriend too, MTF leader. That's why we rely on a black rock for salvation. We talk about this, okay? I'm not saying, oh, all these are true because they can be mathematically proven. We say in this that they are called if functions. That's why it's called a conditional, you dumb fuck retard. But we have to prove it sequential. The ways we can prove this is sequential is the precedence diagram method. We can also use it through Cartesian products. We can also use arrows, weights, and there's multiple ways to prove this. And for one, if when an event happens, it literally correlates to the precedence diagram method, and it comes from something called an insert statement, which is the action of a statement that states what's going to happen within the statement, and it details of that action. You cannot go off a hypothetical. You try to go off a hypothetical in that. That's first of all, if you don't prove that the actually has an outcome of one, that's a null set, and the cardinality is zero. You can't do anything with it. It's useless. And simply put it, actually in that framework, it's going to have attributes missing. And you know why it's going to have attributes missing? Because we call it an inner join. And it's when a product is excluded from the category tables because it's a null set, so it's invalid. So again, it's going to have attributes missing. You cannot just say a conditional leads to logical relationships. That's a gigantic non-sequitur, and it blows up in your face. And again, that's why we have to prove something is sequential. Because if we don't, for example, I'm going to give you another analogy. I'm going to use kindergarten terms. And bald TF leader, yeah, bald ass nigga called MTF leader, nasty ass pedophile, ugly ass Muslim. You know what an operator precedence is? An operator precedence determines the order of operations with something, or else it's going to be ambiguous. Let me give you an analogy. If I say, hey, 10 plus 5 times 2 gives me 30 by adding first, or 20 by multiplying first, there's no way for me to know which one is true unless I use precedence, which ensures there's only one correct interpretation of the mint. Oh my God. Like, that's simply how it works. You cannot just go off a hypothetical once again. And again, the problem is that in SQL evidences, right, or in SQL like mathematical framework, we don't deny conditions. We don't say all things are true. You have to prove the conditional. Again, if something is to be performed, if something is like literally going to be performed, it appeals to the precedence argument. which appeals to the logical relationships and shows that something is going to happen. So simply put it, he just buried himself and he agreed with me that actually something is mathematically true, that it has to happen. And he really acknowledged it that when also like traditional marriage is horrible. None of you and Lane were not cooking. You guys need to stop relying on black rock for salvation. DeMar can intervene.
I bet. After this, do y'all want to conclude after this? Because I'm about to go to bed for him.
Yeah, we can. These niggas lost horribly. We'll get them right.
yeah. This I'm just respond.
But I'm gonna go shower after this, bro. Because these guys wasted my time.
All right,
I'm okay.
Saber says that.
Can you mute? Can you mute right quick?
They're not continued. Well, they play
All
tops
right.
twice.
All
They
right,
can't even be talking.
Kuros. Let me go ahead. Put it into this so we can go ahead and push the fusion side. I feel like Kuros already beat you on the rhetorical part. I don't really care about rhetorical stuff. I really just care about the facts and the truth. So I'm just gonna go ahead and respond to a couple of things because there's a couple, something that Lane has said. First, Lane, nothing that you said actually debunked my point. That actually showed that you didn't listen to anything that I said at all because I already gave you the distinction between the government dealing with prophethood and the government dealing with the chosen lineage, and I already separate the two in order to understand my point. It ain't even if you were to even get into the prophets, I sit right here and I name it every prophet that there ever was, and when you go down a lineage of prophet that have been confirmed, every single one of them was an Israelite until you get to the time of Muhammad, which was so an inconsistency with Muhammad and between the other prophet. You telling me it's double figures of other prophet that's are Israelites, and none of them is not a different lineage. But when you get to Muhammad on son, Allah just changed it to Muhammad being a prophet. But let's not even go into that. Let's go to Surah. Let's go ahead and go to Surah 10, Ayah 94. I'm pretty sure you already know. What that one says, but let me get this right quick. And then this one says, okay, yeah. So I'm actually going to go ahead and go to Surah 5, Surah 5, Ayah 47 first, when it says, let the people of the gospel judge by what Allah has revealed in it. And those who do not judge by what Allah has revealed it are truly the rebellious. But I know you for the ask what Allah meant by this, because Allah could just be talking about some Abrahamic gospel. But we know He's not talking about that, because when you go to Surah 5, Ayah 48, it says, we have revealed it to you, O Prophet, that this book with the truth as a confirmation of previous scriptures and a supreme authority on them. So again, this Allah is confirming to the prophet, trying to say that, this book we're giving you is confirmed by previous scripture which were written before it, which we know is the Torah and the gospel, which we can go to the books of the Torah, we can go to the books of the gospel, right? I just want to go ahead and bring that up right quick. The problem with that is that when you go to Deuteronomy, chapter 4 verse 28, it says right here, there you will worship man-made gods of wood and stone, which cannot see, in, hear, or eat or smell. And I know what you're trying to ask. You're trying to ask, well, who is God? Who is your God talking to, DeMar? Who is the true God talking to? Well, we know who He's talking to within Deuteronomy.
The mic, bro. It's like, nah.
My bad. But yeah, we know he's talking about the Israelites within this, saying that, trying to confirm a prophecy that we're going to worship the wood, that being Christianity, and we're going to worship the stone, that being what we like to call Muslim, which is why you got stuff like the Nation of Islam or the 5%, which are just black Israelites trying to sit right here and trying to say they're the true prophet of Israel, or you got black people trying to be Christianity. Matter of fact, let's go ahead and go on to Gentiles, because you're also bringing up a point about the Gentile. This let me know you don't actually understand my point of view at all. I don't believe Gentiles are other races. I just believe Gentiles are the lineage that were cut out by the olive tree, and that's a prophecy that we get into Genesis, where God Himself confirmed that you would no longer be my people, and you would separate because they were committing adultery and they were acting like the people around them. And then later on, when you get into Paul, since you want to bring up Paul, I can sit right here and quote a verse. I don't have to go get the stuff, but if you were to ask for, I can go get the evidence and read that out for you. But it says in Paul that people are going to confuse and take what Paul says out of context, and that people are not going to truly know what Paul says. So to understand who Paul was talking to, you actually have to read the chapters of that verse, like Galatians. The Galatians were actually a church that was located in a land that was called Galatians. And in there, you can actually go to the people who was a part of that church. All those people were Israelites. When you go into Paul's message, when he's talking about the people, and when he's talking to the Gentiles, by the way, all that are nothing but confirmed prophecy where you can go to the Old Testament and go to confirm that he's talking to the Israelites within that context. Paul never preached it to no one else. And then even if you want to get on Paul, bro, we know via context and historical and if you want the evidence, I can go get it too. The problem is I can quote everything while I actually have to go get it, something that you can't do. Because you haven't quote no verse, no story. You probably only quoted one, but that shit is just bullshit. Anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and continue. But that verse and that chapter within that is telling us that Paul was an Israelite. He was just a brother who was just wicked. Same thing with the Pharisees. We know the Pharisees were Israelite. They were just brothers who was wicked. And we know this because when you go to the story about the lady who was by the lady who didn't want to call a Pharisee woman, we know if you actually go to 1611 King James Bible, go to the same story, we get context. I believe from one of the other disciples who had actually given visions, and then he gave us one context to go into context that woman was actually a Greek woman, which is why he didn't actually wanted to help that woman in the first place. So Jesus himself didn't help no other race or even spoke to anyone besides the Israelite, and he confirmed that multiple times. So just to go ahead and give you a little point of view that I don't actually believe in your interpretation of the Gentile, because that's a false interpretation. The Bible itself do not hold up to that belief. So I need to let you know who you're facing right now. You're facing a true brother who understands and read the Bible, not a fucking Christian who just don't understand. They just want to go based off, what he want to believe in. So I'm going to continue to go ahead and whoop your ass and go ahead and point it to some more sources right here. Matter of fact, let's go ahead and point to Hadith. So if I go to Hadith, my friend be calling your prophet a little pedophile, so I'm going to go ahead and give you the evidence for that too. So if we go to Sunnah, so you can go to Sunnah.com, you can go to Sunnah al-Nasa, and I can give you other Sunnahs that also confirm the same thing, even one which said that she was actually holding a baby doll. But to go ahead and give y'all this Hadith, it says the messenger of Allah married me when I was 6 and consummated the marriage with me when I was 9. And this just one, and I can go get y'all multiple others which also confirm the same thing, such as al-Muslim, such as al-Bukhari. And I know Miss Blah going to sit right here trying to debunk al-Bukhari. That's why I went to al-Nasiya, that I can also go to Surah al-Muslims. And all three of these hadiths all confirm that Muhammad was a pedophile. And al-Muslim is a book that Saber like to point to a lot, but I know he's going to try to discredit it now because he's a fucking false Muslim who don't uphold to even his own beliefs. So to continue whooping y'all ass, to go ahead and put a barrel in the shovel right quick. Where that John at? Surah, where that John at? Surah 10, Ayah 94 says, if you, O Prophet, are in doubt about these stories on that which we have revealed it to you, then ask those who read the scriptures before you. The truth has certainly come to you from your Lord, so do not be one of those in doubt. And the reason why I point to the other source to confirm to you that the Israelites actually had the truth, but during that period of time, because this was like Muhammad period of time when Gabriel was revealing to this. So this all stuff that Gabriel was revealing to him. So even during Muhammad period of time, to reply to something you also said earlier, Lane, yes, Israelites was the chosen people during that period of time, because if you go based on historical context, when Muhammad was an adult, that's when Muhammad would have been given the revelation. Because if you want to say he gave it when he was a child or a literate child who couldn't really understand anything, I think that would just be dumb to say. So we know during Muhammad period of time that Israelite was the chosen one, and I gave you the other two sources to just confirm that we had the truth. And now I'm going to give you this, and I gave you 1094 to confirm that in this, when he talking about the scripture before you, he was talking about the Israelites. And a problem with that when you go to the Bible and just like I gave you the other verse, which telling the Israelites that they're going to worship false gods, it mentioned both Christianity and it mentioned both Islams. And that right there should bury a shovel within this whole Islam belief, because if your book is telling you that the Bible have to confirm what your book is saying, and I don't even have to use the Bible, we can go to the Dead Sea Scroll, because I got a couple of them in my closets and I interpret each and every one of them. And if you want to go to the language, I also study Paleo Hebrew, so I can read what both of these are saying, and they also said the same thing, just so if you want to discredit my Bible on this. The problem with this is that the Bible disagrees with what the Quran says, and that alone should put a barrier in the shovel on why that belief is a shit-ass belief. And like my homie did Ali, y'all can say what y'all want to say. Alma, you can go ahead and give me your verdict, because I know your verdict going to be that we won, because they didn't really debunk shit. Goodbye, guys. And that should put a shovel in that Israelite bullshit.